Hello, I'm Susan Vita, the Chief of the Music Division here at the Library of Congress, and it's my great pleasure to be here today with Judy Collins, the fabulous, well, I don't know what other words you can use to say, but this is Judy Collins. Our archives have been here at the library for almost 2 decades, and so we are now delighted to have her here. She will be doing a book signing and a concert this evening, and we're very much looking forward to all of this. Judy, you've been a special part of our family for, as I said, almost 2 decades. And what is it like having your archives being part of this amazing library, which, as you saw, also holds Mozart and Beethoven's material, along with Rodgers and Hammerstein's and many others?
Well, I've played Mozart with an orchestra when I was 13. In fact, the picture of me in the white organdy dress standing in front of the orchestra when I was 13 is on the cover of my poetry book. Yes. We found it sort of out of the blue. I didn't know where those pictures came from. And so we put it on the cover. The publisher decided to use it. They don't usually put pictures on their books. They put birds, flocks of birds, and rainbows and stuff, but now they have a picture of me. I think they've set a standard now. Everybody wants a picture of themselves standing in front of the orchestra.
Well, that's a good thing to start.
But I am so honored to be a part of history here, because it is the history of so many people that I know, that I've admired, that I've played their music and read their books. And so here I am at the font of intelligence and literacy and art and painting. There's Beethoven over there on the wall. I played Beethoven too as a child.
Well, you did so many, you were really a prodigy. You did so much when you were a child and starting out as a pianist. But you also are a multi-published author. Tonight we're celebrating, as you said, your recent book of poetry, which is called Poems of Love, Loss, and Redemption. Can you give us a sneak peek at your newest book? Oh, Sometimes It's Heaven.
I'd be happy to. In 2017, usually when the year starts, I get the new book, like I still did in school. You know, a new notebook, fresh paper. I'll start over. This time I'll do it right. And so I said to my husband, Lewis Nelson, who designed the Korean Memorial on the Mall here in Washington, D.C. And he said to me, he and I were together 46 years, and this was one of the years that we were together. And he said to me, I said, well, I'll start writing every day something, a poem, you know, a few notes, so that I can harvest songs out of them. And he said, well, why don't you write 365 poems, one every day? He was a disciplinarian at heart.
Say, what a goal.
He managed his own business, telling all these other people what to do, and occasionally he would tell me what to do. And this was one of those moments. And I did that. I can't believe that I wrote 365 poems, and I wrote one every day, religiously. And when I was finished, I had, as he said, 365 poems. And my agent, and by the way, from these poems, I harvested about 20 of them and twisted them into songs, which came out in an album called Spellbound in 2022. That was the last full, it's the only Judy Collins album that is all Judy Collins, because from 1966, when Leonard Cohen told me that he was amazed that I wasn't writing songs, and I went home and started by writing Since You've Asked, and I've always written from then, but I never wrote a whole album of my own songs.
Wow.
I always want to call Leonard and say, guess what? Anyway, so then my agent, as you said, I've written a number of books, and my agent said, how about those poems that Lewis told you to write? Have you got them? And I said, yes, I have them. And she said, well, let's take a look. So that's what came out as Sometimes It's Heaven. And you know, I've done a number of readings already. Sometimes I sit at the piano, I read the poems, and I noodle. That's what I do when I write songs anyway. I used to, when I had time to go home and noodle for a while. I don't have much time for that anymore. I am the Betty White of the folk music revival, of course. My sister says I should slow down, and I just smile.
Don't do that. No, don't do that. Well, you mentioned poetry and you mentioned song lyrics. I know you've said in the past that they're not the same.
No.
Can you tell us how they're different?
They're totally different. And you can understand that if you see there are only a few instances with people setting into music poems that have existed. People try to set many, many artists, and it just doesn't. There are only a few people now.
The Star-Spangled Banner is one of them.
Star-Spangled Banner is one that was set from a poem, and it worked, but very rarely. Now I know that William Butler Yeats was set, The Golden Apples of the Sun, which came from the Song of the Wandering Angus, his poem, was set by, guess who? Burl Ives. Do you have Burl Ives here?
Yes, we
You
do.
must have.
We do.
And they probably are there somewhere in the writing out.
We'll take a look.
And you know, as I said, Golden Apples of the Sun was set from Wandering Angus, and it's very simple. I went out to the hazelwood because a fire was in my head. Very simple. The difference is in the meter, in the rhyme, in the rhythm of the poem, as opposed to what has to happen in the lyric of a song. Now, you can, which I did, twist a poem into a lyric, but you can't very often set a poem from Wordsworth or Dylan Thomas to music, because usually it doesn't work. But once in a while, you get lucky and you have Burl Ives set one of your lyrics.
Well, that's really interesting.
But I thought, excuse me for saying, that I thought the Nobel people didn't understand this when they gave Mr. Dylan the award for being the poet, and he wrote lyrics. I mean, he wanted to write poems and so on, but somehow he made poems into lyrics. He made lyrics into poems. Well, I thought so. Anyway, I didn't think that his lyrics were poems, and I didn't think that his poems were lyrics.
We'll let them know.
I have a couple of other soapboxes that you'd like to see me stand on.
Oh, yes. We'll see what we can do to explore them.
Encourage that.
So what do you think the impact of sharing all this I mean, it's just bursting out of you, the creativity. It's just, doesn't just take one line or one form. So what kind of impact do you think all this creativity has had on you and on the people around you, or the?
Well, sometimes I get to hear people. I've had a couple of concerts. One of them was in Nashville at the Ryman in late February. In March, I had a big show in New York with artists singing my songs that I've written, other artists, and doing that. And they also did that at the Ryman a few weeks before. And it has permeated into the lives and the performances of other artists. And occasionally, Martha Redbone sang one of my songs in New York at the town hall on March 8th. And it was, My Name It Is Maria, the song about the dreamers. And I wrote that in 2017 when I heard a woman talking about the fact that her daughter, who was a dreamer, was terrified that she was going to get thrown out of the country, as so many are terrified now. And I stopped singing that song, even though it affected people very greatly. And after I heard Martha Redbone sing it, I've started to sing it again, and people go nuts because it is a very upsetting, it's one of the products of one of the byproducts of our community of controversy.
Let's go back to some of the things that you saw earlier in the when we were showing you some of the things for our collection. And one of the things that we showed you was Oscar Hammerstein's rendition of My Favorite Things and how it changed over the days. He was meticulous in keeping notes about what he was doing each day, and you could see the process, which is something that we absolutely adore doing, and it's because it is so inspirational and shows where the creator was coming from. Do you have a process that you use when you're writing songs? Do you write them down? Do you? You said something about noodling on the piano. What do you do?
A lot of my process involves the devices that we now have. Yes, I write. I always wrote the lyrics. I always write the lyrics. And I don't always save them in the manner that I did in the first place. I should always do that more carefully.
Yeah,
and also I have devices which record them.
Ah, yes.
So I am now living in the world of devices which do many things for us. I no longer write my journals. I dictate my journals on my iPhone because I can't read my writing anymore. I don't know how Hammerstein felt about his, but I know that Beethoven, even though he was deaf, he wrote carefully and diligently the whole manuscript, or the whole, whatever one calls it. What do they call it? Dr. Brico always handed me the, first I saw the score.
Yeah.
And she said, no, you can't listen to it. This was when I was 13 learning Mozart, which I would play with her orchestra. I was 11 rather, when I started memorizing the Mozart K365, and Mozart is somewhere here too. I was just looking at his music, and look at Sondheim. Sondheim is wonderful. Oh, this of course is Mozart, and I don't think K365 is here, but look at what he wrote. The concerto that I played, that I memorized at 11 and played at 13, was the concerto that he wrote for his sister Nan Earl and himself, and they performed K365 when they were, I think, 7 and 9, and I performed it when I was 13. So I thought, but look at this beautiful, beautiful writing. And I could never, by the way, I couldn't sight read. Actually, I could memorize it, but I couldn't sight read very well. And my friends who played the flute would say to me, can you play the Mozart such and such for the flute? And I'd say, I can't sight read. I could memorize it for you, which would take me a few weeks. This is extraordinary to know that I was playing some of these notes myself when I was 13.
Yes, exactly.
And actually, the picture of me playing with the orchestra at 13 is on the cover of this. I don't know if I've said that before.
That's
Sometimes
okay.
I repeat myself.
Since you mentioned Sondheim, we had an opportunity, since we've just gotten his collection here, we had an opportunity to show you this manuscript.
Isn't it rich? Are we a pair? I can sight read this. I know it very well. Me hear it, lost on the ground, you in midair, send in the clouds. I was so lucky. I'll tell you who found this song for me.
Who?
You know that my relationship with with Leonard Cohen started in 1966. And when I recorded Suzanne, the first thing I recorded of his, he and I introduced each other to our best friends. And he introduced me to his friend, who he grew up with in Canada. And her name was Nancy Bacall. She's a filmmaker. By the way, she made a film called about the beautiful sitar player whose name escapes me. Anyway, she and I became friends because he and I introduced each other to our best friends. Nancy Bacall in 1966 became a buddy of mine, and in 1973, she sent me a record of Little Night Music.
Oh.
And she said, put the needle on this cut, which was Send in the Clown, and then call me. I didn't call her. I called what's his name? I adored him. Stephen Sondheim's producer, Hal Prince. I called Hal Prince because his name was on the record.
And we have his collection too.
Oh, God, I loved him so much. And we became friends in the last 4 or 5 years of his life. But I knew his name, so I called him and I said, you know, you have a great song here. He said, yeah, I know. About 400 people have already recorded it. And I said, Mr. Prince, I don't care about that. All I care about is recording Send in the Clowns. So I want you to tell me who I should call to have do the orchestration. So he said, well, you have to have Jonathan Tunick do that. And Jonathan is my friend. He did the orchestration. He's probably, I don't know if he's the only one that put the English horn on the front of the song. Da, 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 English horn first, then me. And that's the trick, because once anybody hears da, 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 da on the English horn, they know they want to hear the whole thing. And it just happens that I'm singing it.
Yeah.
So Nancy Bacall is the link to my life and Leonard Cohen's, among others, because I've recorded lots of his songs as well. But here he is, and he's written, Sondheim has written everything out here for me.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Personally, he didn't sign it for me,
and
I noticed.
The lyrics are behind it. I think we can find, let's see.
Yes, I'd love to see how he wrote that out. And he's written it on the manuscript too. You can see if you focus on this. However, doing the lyrics by hand is something else.
Yes.
I wonder if his writing was legible to anybody else. He printed it beautifully underneath the line of the song. I could have read this actually, even then. But this is, to me, see, this marks it as the lyric of the composer because you can't really read it. This is amazing. How did he read it? That's what I want to know.
I know I can't read my own writing anymore, so I know what you're talking about.
No, I would never.
So do you have any stories of him? Were you a friend of his? Did you meet him?
I met him at an Equal Rights Amendment fundraiser. And he came up to me. It was about, let's see, I recorded it in, I don't even know. It was before, yeah, I recorded it about 8 years before I met him at the Equal Rights Amendment party at the Ginger Man in New York City, where I also met my husband of 46 years. Because a friend of mine said, I met this guy, and I said, I don't want to meet him. And she said, well, I'll bring him to that Equal Rights Amendment party, where I also met Sondheim. And for the first, and maybe the only time, he said, I want to thank you for recording Send in the Clowns.
He said that.
It's my favorite. That's what he said to me. The only time he said it to me, but he said it to me, so thank God.
Yes. That is
And then, of course, we met. I recorded a bunch of his songs, other songs that I loved. And he once told me that he would play on that recording, and then he took it back. And he said, well, I really can't play on your record because I have an obligation not to play on other people's recordings of my songs, which finally made sense, don't you think?
Yes.
I think so. And so I recorded a number of his wonderful songs, and I have a whole album of those. And I would see him from time to time. We'd see each other at parties. I went over, though, the most exciting time that I ever spent with him. I went to his home, and we had a whole day together. And he sat down at the piano and he began to play. This was probably in 1993. And this is because I wanted to hear him. He said, I'll play them for you and you'll understand. And I went to the house where he lived, the apartment. It was really a home in a sort of structure. And he started playing, and I realized, which I didn't know before, every note he wrote, every note in every one of Jonathan Tunick's orchestrations were Sondheim's notes. The piano was exactly, see, I always thought that an orchestrator orchestrated and created the harmonies no. In the case of Sondheim, he did every single note that you hear in Jonathan Tunick's orchestrations. Wow. And I was so bowled over, I couldn't believe myself. And then he gave me these recordings of Sondheim playing for Hal Prince's, well, Hal Prince didn't need to raise money after the Pajama Game. That was his first. He said, all the people who funded me on Pajama Game have funded me on every single Sondheim that I produced.
Fantastic.
And so he said I didn't have, but there was me singing, sitting next to this wonderful man who wrote all these songs, and he played them all for me.
Wow, what a day.
And I got it. Everything was exactly what the orchestration was for the rest of the instruments. I was just in heaven. And then he gave me a set of his audios, his little cassettes. Mm-hmm. And they were all him playing for what he called the backers audition. Somewhere he had to play them for somebody with Hal. And so he played them all. And he told the stories of the plays, of the musicals.
While he was
playing on these tapes. I still have them. They are now, I think now he's in the past 40 years. This was 40 years ago. In the past 40 years, they have sold them, these original tapes of him playing and singing the songs. Mm-hmm. And so I have some originals, but now you can get them online somewhere or from the cloud. Don't we live in a strange, don't you feel an impact of the cloud and how we live in the cloud? Don't you have that?
I try not to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's correct. That's where you should be on this issue.
On the ground, my feet on the ground. You have, you know that your archives are here, and
I am so grateful.
Well, we are too. What would you hope a young musician just getting her start might draw from the things that she's able to find here?
Oh, well, I think every young musician should come here and look at what's here, because there's such an inspiration here on every level, and every kind of music, and every kind of art.
Yes.
And every kind of written material. I mean, I know already so many people that I know personally whose archives are here. Yeah. So, on the other hand, you could take the advice of your own muse, not look at anybody else's work, and sit down and try to find out what yours is. You know, I didn't know, for instance, when I started writing songs, because Leonard Cohen told me that he said he was surprised that I didn't write my own songs. Mm-hmm. And then I went off to the other room and sat down at my Steinway and wrote Since You've Asked. But I had always forgotten. When I was growing up, my best friends that I met in grade school, they were both dancers, and I was always practicing the piano, learning Mozart, learning Rachmaninoff, and practicing 2 hours a day. So we formed a trio, and they danced to Little Red Riding Hood, and I made up the songs when I was 14, sitting at the piano, which I practiced every day for 2 hours. And I forgot, and they forgot, and everybody forgot the songs that I wrote for Little Red Riding Hood, because they danced the story. I told the story and sang the songs that I had written on the piano. We played all over Denver, at the Kiwanis Club, at the Elks Club, at the Lowry Air Force Base, at the Children's Hospital in Denver, and we were going to take this to Las Vegas. They were beautiful dancers. Marcia was engaged by the Royal Ballet before they were the Royal Ballet, and she was 16, and they brought her to England, and she danced for 9 months of the school year, and then she came back home and started dancing to Little Red Riding, and then to the Gypsy Rover. So we had a whole thing going. And we took the Gypsy Rover all over town, to all of these clubs, and to the women's groups. We met Tony Curtis at the women's group at the Brown Palace. I'll never forget it. So I forgot when I was talking to Leonard, and he was saying, you don't write your own song. I'd forgotten, and nobody in Denver remembers what I wrote for the Little Red Riding Hood. They remember going to it, but they don't remember what I wrote. So that's how you have to start. If you have a dream, if you have a talent, you have to start doing something about it. And no advice is better than none.
Yeah.
Because what you do, you don't take people's advice. You go forward with what you think is your job to do. And I had luck because I had people who helped me and said, yeah, that's good, but try another one.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have demonstrated how you started out like a whirling dervish, going all around Colorado or whatever, and you haven't stopped.
I'm still a whirling dervish.
Yes, exactly. How do you spend what would a typical week be for you?
Call up your friends and make dinner dates. Go to see a good play from time to time, hoping it's good. I'm not always lucky enough that sometimes I see something good. Spend time with my cats, spend time with my friends, spend time practicing. I always practice. I practice all the time when I'm home. I have to. So yeah, I'm a whirling dervish. And I had to travel with that cast, and I managed to sit down and read poems and noodle, because I could move my fingers. So with the cast on, I still noodled behind I don't know what I played. But I'm a multitasker. So when I'm home, I order food, I call friends, I play the piano, I go to the museums a lot. I go around New York. I love New York. I've lived in New York since 1963, so that's a long time. And I love New York, and I love my friends, and I'm making new friends. And this terrible thing that happened, which was that my husband had not been diagnosed with cancer when he had heart problems for 4 years and had all kinds of attention to the heart and no attention. So when he got to Mount Sinai, they said, we know what's the matter with him. He has 2 weeks to live.
Oh gosh, that's terrible.
He never was in pain. He didn't know. And I don't think he was surrounded by family, thank God, and by people who adored him. And as I said, he designed the Korean Memorial here in Washington, D.C. And he's regarded as a very important designer on many levels. He did a lot of things. One of his clients early on was Head Skis, and they were always black skis. When we were little and we were teenagers and we were in our 20s, we skied on black skis. But when he got his job with Head Skis, he said, no more black, we're gonna have the rainbow of all the colors. And they had all the colors, and that was him.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being a part of the library's family and a part of our history, and it is wonderful having you here. I hope that you have enjoyed the experience so far and will enjoy the rest of the day.
Total blessing to see this and be part of it. It's just a miracle.
Well, I think that's thanks to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sue.